After Phil and Carol get married, the arrival of the beautiful Melissa makes Phil regret his rash decision. He convinces both women that the best way to repopulate the earth is for the two of them to sleep with him. Unfortunately, another male survivor, Todd, disrupts Phil's schemes when Melissa begins to fall for the affable newcomer. Phil confesses his feelings for Melissa but gets rejected. In the bar, Phil continues to play off his confession as though he is simply rehearsing those lines to say to Carol. But then Melissa kisses him and they make love in his bedroom. Seconds later, Phil wakes up from his dream when he hears an upbeat song from Melissa's house. Phil returns to bed and back to the dream where he's cuddling with Melissa. Suddenly, Todd appears in the bed, and Phil screams, awake from his nightmare. The following morning, Carol, who has dryer sheets in her nose, visits her husband while in his toilet pool. She tells him to clean it out because it's become a health hazard for everyone. She's had to go to various hotels in the city to use the bathroom to avoid making a makeshift toilet. Phil is cranky since he could not sleep last night because of the song that kept playing, and Carol theorizes that maybe Melissa and Todd were making love. He thinks it's too soon, so Carol reminds him he proposed to her after only a few days. Later that day, Phil visits a cheerful Todd outside his house and asks him about the song. Todd is reluctant to divulge any details at first, but eventually admits he and Melissa slept together last night, and the song is their making love song. Phil has a pained look on his face while he listens to Todd happily recount the greatest night of his life. Moments later, Melissa arrives and asks Todd to help her with something. Phil volunteers himself, but she insists Todd do it because it's something he'd already started. When she leaves, Todd giddily explains to Phil that Melissa was referring to them sleeping together. Minutes later, Phil returns to his house and hears the same song playing loudly from Melissa's house. He heads to his margarita pool and falls in head first, screaming out his frustrations. That night, Phil lies wide awake in bed as the song continues. The following day at breakfast, Carol asks for her husband's pool cleaning updates, but he hasn't gotten to it yet. When the song starts playing again, Carol says Melissa told her she and Todd had been sleeping together. Phil thinks it's unacceptable that they're disturbing the entire neighborhood. She says he could do something about it since he's technically the president of the United States. That night, Phil calls for a meeting and introduces the grievance board, where the four can write their complaints. He wants a family-friendly neighborhood and requests that Melissa and Todd not be so open about their dalliances. Phil then proposes a curfew for copulation, but Melissa says what she and Todd do is nobody else's business. Phil informs them he's president and starts a vote on the restriction of copulation, but only he votes in favor of it. When no one else votes with him, Carol suggests a motion for Phil to clean his toilet pool, and Melissa seconds it. Todd hesitates but ultimately votes with the women because the pool's smell is wafting over to his house. The next day, Phil wears a hazmat suit to begin cleaning out his pool. Still, his inexperience at the task and his general bitterness about Melissa and Todd's relationship causes him to angrily throw the cleaning materials into the water before falling in. He cries defeatedly by the poolside and doesn't notice Melissa behind him. When Phil finally notices Melissa behind him, she asks if they can talk, and he says they can after he's changed out of the filthy suit. After Phil cleans himself up, Melissa apologizes for being insensitive to his feelings. He expresses his disappointment with them not sleeping together because Todd arrived and asks her if things would be different if Todd weren't here. She doesn't want to entertain the thought because Todd exists and implies that Phil just accept reality. When Melissa leaves, Phil contemplates a malicious idea that might better his chances with Melissa. Minutes later, Phil asks Todd if he wants to go for a ride. Inside the truck, Phil takes Todd to his thinking spot in the middle of the desert. He spent the last 3 hours listening to Todd talk about his and Melissa's intimate secrets. When Phil has heard enough, he pretends something is wrong with the vehicle and asks Todd to go outside and check it out. When Todd steps out of the truck, Phil drives off, leaving the clueless man behind. After driving several hundred meters, Phil stops on the brakes as his guilt eats at him. He backs the truck toward Todd and then drives away several times before finally composing himself and picking up Todd. Todd is oblivious to his friend's spiteful plan and thinks he's playing a prank. He asks Phil where his thinking spot is, and Phil says they're there. Todd takes a moment to sit silently in his thoughts before they drive back home. The guilty man apologizes to his friend, and Todd wonders what he's sorry for, but Phil doesn't elaborate. Todd shares that back in the thinking spot, he thinks Phil is a nice guy, but Phil argues that he could be nicer. Later, Phil puts on the hazmat suit again and finally cleans his toilet pool. The next day, Phil surprises his wife by insisting she take the dryer sheets out of her nose. She immediately notices the unpleasant smell is gone. He then leads her to the bathroom, where he set up a porta potty so she won't have to go to a hotel anymore. A few days later, the four friends have drinks by a bonfire when Carol sees the charm bracelet Todd gifted Melissa. She says her husband never gets her anything, and he reminds her of the rash cream she got her that one time. Seconds later, Todd shows them the sculpture he made of the four of them, and the women compliment his talent. Todd places the sculpture on the table and Melissa kisses him. Phil pushes the sculpture off the table and pretends as if he did it accidentally. The following day, Phil visits Carol to borrow her DVR, and she says he wouldn't have to borrow her things if they had just lived together. He is committed committed to keeping his own space, but she thinks it's not helping with the repopulation plan. She mentions how Melissa and Todd are living together and is annoyed that Phil can't even fix her door and will ask Todd to do it. Phil lies and says the purpose of his visit is to fix the door. At the bar, Phil resents the women's admiration of Todd to his ball buddies. He feels he doesn't get credit for starting the community they live in and believes he needs to do something spectacular to remind them of how important he is. Outside the bar, he sees an adult female cow walking toward him. Later in his house, Phil gathers the others to show them the cow, and they are all excited about seeing a live animal. He asks them how they like their beef cooked, but they don't want to butcher it for meat. They want to keep it alive for milk, and then Todd suggests he makes them butter, yogurt, and cheese because he learned how to do it when he worked on his uncle's dairy farm. The women are ecstatic about Todd's suggestion, but Phil says he calls the shots because he found the cow. When he feels the women are siding against him, he lies about being lactose intolerant, pretends to be selfless, and lets them keep the cow alive. Todd offers to keep the cow in his grassy yard, but Phil thinks it's better to keep it in his house, and Carol is offended that he'd let an animal live in his house but not his wife. Eventually, the cow heads for the door, searching for the grass in Todd's yard. Phil allows Todd to keep the cow for the night. Todd mentions that cows can walk upstairs but not downstairs, then asks them if they want to learn how to milk it. He then shows them the proper technique and lets the women enjoy a sip of the fresh milk. Phil longingly looks at the bowl but remembers that he's supposed to be lactose intolerant, then fakes a stomachache so he can leave. That night, Phil sneaks into Todd's yard to steal some milk, then hides when he sees Melissa and Todd. When the couple leaves, he undoes the cow's robes and leads it away to hide it. The following day, the women eagerly await the milk for their cereal but are heartbroken when Todd informs them of the cow's disappearance. Meanwhile, Phil keeps the cow in the bar and tells his ball friends that he'll take the cow back home and be the hero again. Later, Phil pretends to be shocked the new cow is gone and subtly goads the women to place the blame on Todd even if they aren't. Melissa thinks Phil knows where the cow is, and he pleads innocence, so she says they should all search for it. Inside the house, Melissa divides the map into 4 quadrants and chooses the quadrant where the bar is, and Phil panics because he might get caught. Outside the bar, Phil spies on Melissa, who goes into the bar but comes back empty-handed. Inside the bar, Phil finds that the cow has gone missing. Later, Phil sees Todd cross the road, leading the cow, and tries to act happy for him. Todd says he'll tell the girls Phil found the cow, as his way to thank him for finding a place in the world where he could have love, friends, and fresh milk. That evening, the friends enjoy milk and cereal under the stars, and Melissa tells Phil he did a good job. She asks him why he's eating cereal and milk when he's lactose intolerant, and he says it's his cheat day. That night, Carol's screams wake the others, and they find her in the bedroom with the cow. Phil laughs at his wife's silly predicament, but she tells him that she has to live with him now. This is because the cow can't walk down the stairs and only made it into her bedroom because he never fixed her door. In bed, Phil asks Carol how the cow could have escaped the knot, and she says he doesn't know how, but she set the cow loose herself and led it to her bedroom with some grass. That night, he can't sleep due to Carol's noises with her sleep apnea machine. The following day, Phil sees Carol's little additions to the Monet and Van Gogh paintings and is annoyed by her storing away his adult magazines. They get into an argument about compromises in their marriage. He wishes to be alone, but she makes him a shopping list before he leaves. In the store parking lot, the frustrated man lets out his vexation at Carol by lighting the shopping cart with the items she requested on fire. He screams at God for introducing him to Melissa after marrying Carol and immediately bringing Todd into their lives. He wishes he could do everything all over again. Suddenly, an SUV drives into the parking lot, and Erica and Gail step out of the vehicle. The 2 women are overjoyed upon seeing another person and say they saw his alive in Tucson signs. They ask him if he's all alone, and he lies and says yes. He asks for a hug, and the women happily oblige. Later, the women take him to their home, where they pop champagne in the bedroom. Phil sits on the bed suggestively and asks them how they met. They say they met in the White House and have been together ever since. Erica sees his wedding ring, and he's reminded of his life with Carol and excuses himself from them but promises to return for dinner. Phil returns home, where Carol notes a positive difference in his disposition. He credits it to the alone time he just spent and asks if he can go camping tonight, and she encourages him to go for it. At the dinner party, Erica and Gail wear fancy dresses when Phil dons a smart-looking suit. The women have prepared a wide spread of delicious food because Gail was a chef. Meanwhile, Carol has Todd and Melissa over to her house for dinner featuring her raisin balls. Melissa thinks it's strange that Phil is out camping and still doesn't trust him, but Carol insists that despite her husband's weirdness, his heart's in the right place. Phil guzzles booze fed to him by the women and is having a great time. Suddenly, he mentions having an older lady and a woman of color as part of his bucket list, and the women are offended. He saves himself by talking about his late wife, Carol, who had hoped that he would meet women after she passed, so Erica and Gail feel sorry for him. With his sad story, he apologizes for bringing the party down, so Gail suggests they go skinny dipping in the hot springs and Phil excitedly agrees. Meanwhile, in the house, Todd and Carol plan to show their appreciation for Phil by getting balloons from the party store. In the SUV, Erica and Gail see the headlights from Carol's car and the 2 groups of people greet each other with hugs. Erica and Gail want them to meet the man they just met, but when they try to open the door, it's locked. Phil lifts his head slowly, and Erica and Gail are surprised that Carol recognizes him, and she tells them that he's her husband. The entire group listens to Phil's futile excuse of attempting a prank on both groups. Melissa thinks what he did was disgusting, and his actions have disappointed Todd and Carol. Melissa tells Erica and Gail to follow them to the cul-de-sac, and both vehicles drive off, leaving Phil behind. The following day, Phil enters Todd and Melissa's house, where they're having coffee with Erica and Gail. The group falls silent once he walks in, and they ignore him. Phil returns to his house, wanting to talk to Carol. She pretends to be a ghost because he told Erica and Gail she passed away. She doesn't want to listen to his excuses and tells him to get out. In the bar, Phil thinks his banishment will be temporary and thinks a break from people might do him good. Afterward, he falls asleep on the pool table. The following day, Carol sews a quilt when Erica and Gail enter her house carrying an apology pie. Carol doesn't appreciate the gesture, and Erica seems chafed at her hostility. Later, Melissa and Todd drop by Carol's house to see how she's doing. Carol turns down their pity party for her, gives them a strained smile, and reiterates that everything is fine. That night, Phil realizes the others aren't coming to get him, and his stay in the bar might not be temporary. Deep inside, he wishes he could be someone else. Later, he presents himself at Carol's door as Mike Miller, his brother, with curled hair and glasses. Carol closes the door in his face, and Phil wonders how that didn't work. Later that day, Phil overhears Melissa, Todd, Erica, and Gail talking about him using a listening device. In the bar, Phil still believes he isn't a liar, but after pondering all of the falsehoods he said to everyone, he realizes that he is, in fact, a deceiver. Moments later, Phil approaches the group and comes clean about wanting to go skinny dipping with Erica and Gail. He also tells Melissa that he did want to sleep with her, not just for repopulation purposes. Lastly, he tells Carol that he shouldn't have married her because he didn't mean it when he said "I do." He knows he hurt her the most and apologizes for everything. He claims he'd rather be honest with no friends than continue being a liar. In the bar, Carol thinks it's time they stop trying to make the marriage work because they both want each other to be happy. She serves him handwritten divorce papers, and Phil signs them. They share one last hug and then several passionate kisses. After the kiss, there's an awkward silence before Carol leaves the bar.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.